Worthless and shameful. A macho joke. How could I marry a black person like you? He spat in her face right at the family dinner. Food and shame combined into a moment so cruel, it silenced everyone. A chuckle twisted in his chest as he watched her cower, humiliated in front of family, friends, and colleagues. What he didn't know, what no one realized, was that she wasn't as powerless as she seemed. Beneath her quiet composure lay a secret strength, a hidden force that could turn the world he flaunted upside down. And in that moment, the first crack in his arrogance appeared. The woman he thought he could break was preparing a reckoning he would never see coming. This is the story of betrayal, hidden power, and the slow, inevitable rise of someone underestimated. And today it is being retold by me. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The Montgomery estate glowed with golden lights that spilled across its marble floors. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks above the dining hall. The long mahogany table, polished to a mirror shine, stretched from one end of the room to the other. It was set with china plates, silver cutlery, and glasses that sparkled under the light. The dinner was meant to be a celebration. Alexander Montgomery's idea, of course. He liked showing off his wealth, his family name, and his power. Everyone important was there. Relatives, business partners, old friends, all of them white. They filled the seats with laughter, polite smiles, and murmurs of admiration for the Montgomery family. At the far side of the table sat Sophia Montgomery, a black woman in a sea of white faces. She wore a soft blue dress, simple compared to the glittering outfits of the other women. Her dark hair was tied neatly at the back of her head, her posture calm. She spoke little, only smiling politely when someone addressed her. To many in the room, Sophia was invisible. To Alexander, she was worse than that. Alexander, a white man with a sharp suit and sharper smile, sat at the head of the table, raising his wine glass. "To family," he said loudly. His voice boomed across the hall. "To success, to honor, to legacy." The guests echoed the toast, glasses clinking. Sophia lifted her glass quietly, her hand steady. She had no need to speak. She had never been the center of attention in this house. Alexander noticed. He always noticed. "Sophia," he said suddenly, his voice sharp enough to cut through the room. "Are you going to say nothing again?" Heads turned. Some smiled awkwardly. Others pretended not to notice. Sophia lowered her glass gently. "I thought your words were enough, Alexander," she said softly. A small smile touched her lips, but it was the kind of smile that tried to keep peace, not stir it. Alexander's laugh was cold. "Of course, always the quiet one, nothing to say, nothing to add, useless at home, useless in conversation. Tell me, Sophia, why are you even here?" The room fell silent. Sophia's fingers tightened around her glass, but her face stayed calm. Eleanor Montgomery, Alexander's mother, leaned forward. She was a white woman dressed in black silk, her gray hair pulled tight, her eyes sharp as needles. "She's here because you married her, Alexander," Eleanor said, her voice carrying a tone of disdain. "Though sometimes I wonder why she came from nothing, from that tiny house, that plain family. We told you she wasn't good enough for the Montgomerys." Sophia's chest tightened, but she did not move. She was used to Eleanor's words. They were knives she had learned to take without bleeding on the outside. Alexander smirked, encouraged by his mother's support. He leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms. That's right. Look at her sitting there like a statue. No sparkle, no charm, no presence. Tell me, Sophia, what exactly do you bring to this family? What do you do besides breathe our air and sit at my table? The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their eyes to their plates. Others exchanged glances, waiting to see how far Alexander would go. Sophia looked at him. Her voice was steady, almost too calm. I bring loyalty, Alexander, and respect. Her words hung in the air, simple but heavy. Alexander's jaw tightened. He didn't like her calmness. It made him feel mocked, though she hadn't raised her voice at all. Loyalty? Alexander said, scoffing. Respect? Don't make me laugh. Nobody here respects you. A soft gasp rippled through the table. Sophia's eyes flickered for a moment. Pain. She tried to swallow it down. Olivia Thompson, a white woman seated to Sophia's left, quickly touched Sophia's hand under the table. She leaned closer, whispering, Don't let him get to you. Sophia glanced at her friend, grateful for the comfort. Olivia's brown eyes seemed warm, kind. Yet, when she turned her gaze to Alexander, something unreadable lingered there. Something Sophia did not notice. Alexander wasn't finished. His voice rose, filled with cruel amusement. You're nothing, Sophia. A ghost in this house. A decoration I regret picking up. How did I ever marry someone like you? He laughed, the kind of laugh that was meant to sting. Then came the moment. Alexander leaned forward suddenly, his lips curled into a smile, sharp and cruel, and without warning, he spat directly at Sophia across the table. The spit landed near her plate, droplets splashing onto her dress. The room froze. Gasps broke the silence. Forks clattered against plates. A hush fell so heavy it was almost suffocating. Sophia flinched just slightly, her eyes lowering to her stained dress. Her hands trembled once before she steadied them on her lap. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply sat there silent with shame burning in her chest. Alexander laughed again, louder this time, his chest shaking with satisfaction. Look at her. Worthless, embarrassing, a freaking joke. Eleanor shook her head in mock pity. This is what happens when you marry beneath you. Benjamin Montgomery, Alexander's younger brother, a white man with calculating eyes, chuckled softly. He enjoyed the humiliation, but for reasons of his own. Olivia moved quickly. She grabbed a napkin from the table and leaned in toward Sophia. Here, take this, she whispered. Her voice was soft, urgent, almost motherly. Sophia accepted the napkin, dabbing at her dress with small, controlled movements. Don't listen to him, Olivia murmured close to her ear. You're better than this. Better than him? Sophia's lips pressed together tightly. She nodded once, not trusting her voice. But as Olivia turned her head, her eyes lingered on Alexander just for a second. The pity in her face faded, replaced with a flicker of something else, something dangerous. Admiration. Longing. It was gone in an instant, hidden behind a mask of loyalty, but the camera would have caught it. The dining hall remained frozen in silence, the kind of silence that pressed heavy against the chest, suffocating and unbearable. Forks lay untouched, glasses half raised, eyes darting nervously between Sophia and Alexander. Sophia sat still, napkin in hand, gently blotting at her dress. Her face remained calm, too calm, like a porcelain mask holding back a storm. Inside her chest ached with fire, humiliation, betrayal, grief, but she would not let it spill in front of them. Alexander leaned back, arms crossed, smirking like a man who believed he had won. His laughter faded into a satisfied grin. There, he said, loud enough for the whole table. Now she looks the way she feels. Pathetic. A few guests looked down at their plates, ashamed but too fearful of Alexander to speak. Others forced nervous chuckles, pretending it was nothing more than a tasteless joke. Eleanor Montgomery broke the silence first. She sighed, shaking her head with false sympathy. "Sophia, dear, perhaps you should excuse yourself. You're clearly not fit for company tonight." The words cut like a blade, spoken with deliberate cruelty. Eleanor's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, as though she had waited years for this moment. Sophia lifted her gaze slowly, her eyes locked with Eleanor's, calm but unflinching. "Thank you for your concern," she said softly. "But I am perfectly fine." Her voice was gentle, but the firmness underneath made a few heads turn. For just a second, Eleanor's smile faltered. Benjamin Montgomery chuckled, swirling the wine in his glass. "Oh, come now, Mother," he said. "Let her stay. It's rare entertainment. We don't get this kind of show every day." His grin was sharp, his eyes glinting with mischief. Alexander slapped the table, laughing at his brother's remark. Exactly. Let her stay. Let everyone see what a failure of a wife looks like. Sophia's fingers tightened on the napkin in her lap, but she said nothing. Silence was her only weapon in that moment, though it looked like surrender to everyone else. Olivia leaned closer again, whispering urgently, "Sophia, you don't have to sit here and take this. We can leave right now. Let them choke on their cruelty." Sophia turned her head slightly, her voice low. "If I leave, Olivia, they win. I won't give them that." Olivia's heart tugged with pity, and something else she didn't want to name. She admired Sophia's quiet strength, but when her eyes flicked back to Alexander, the admiration shifted. He sat there laughing boldly, owning the room without fear. Power radiated from him, even in his cruelty. It stirred something dangerous inside her. The dinner dragged on, every moment thick with tension. The servants moved carefully, afraid to draw attention. Conversations tried to resume, but kept dying in the shadow of what had happened. Alexander, however, thrived in it. He raised his glass again, smirking. "To my dear wife," he said mockingly, "the most loyal, most silent woman in the world. May she never speak, and may she never matter." A few nervous laughs bubbled around the table, though most guests stayed quiet. Nobody dared confront him. Sophia raised her glass, too, her hands steady, her eyes swept across the table over Alexander, Eleanor, Benjamin, and the guests who looked away in shame. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "To family," she said simply, her voice calm, clear, and steady. The words were plain, but something about the way she said them silenced the laughter. It was as though in her stillness there was a quiet defiance none of them could name. Alexander's smirk faltered for the first time only for a heartbeat. Eleanor coughed into her napkin, covering her irritation. Benjamin narrowed his eyes, intrigued. Olivia felt a shiver run through her. Sophia's calmness unsettled her, though she couldn't explain why. She slipped her hand under the table, giving Sophia's fingers a small squeeze. "You're stronger than you look," she whispered. Sophia didn't answer. She didn't need to. When the dinner finally ended, the guests rose quickly, eager to escape the suffocating tension. They whispered as they left, stealing glances at Sophia, some with pity, some with judgment. Eleanor swept out of the room with her head high, satisfied. Benjamin lingered, smirking at Sophia as if she were an interesting puzzle. Alexander strutted out, laughing loudly with a few friends, his arm draped around one of them like the king of his castle. Sophia remained seated until the last of them were gone. Only Olivia stayed by her side. "Sophia," Olivia said softly, crouching beside her chair. "I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. Sophia folded the napkin slowly, setting it on the table. She looked at her friend with calm, steady eyes. Don't be sorry for me, Olivia, she said. Save your sorrow for them. Olivia blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? Sophia stood smoothing her dress. Her movements were graceful, deliberate. She did not look broken, only quiet, only watchful. One day, Sophia said softly, almost to herself, the same people who laugh will choke on it. Olivia's breath caught. She didn't understand the weight behind the words, but they lingered in her chest, like a warning. Sophia walked out of the hall, her back straight, her dignity intact despite the stain on her dress. Olivia followed, her face torn between loyalty to Sophia and the secret pull she felt whenever Alexander was near. And somewhere deep inside her, Sophia carried a fire no one at that table had seen. Not yet? If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments where are you watching from, and how did this story speak to you? The house was silent after the dinner. The guests had left, their whispers carried away into the night, but the echo of Alexander's laugh still rang in Sophia's ears. She moved slowly through the estate's empty halls, her dress still faintly stained, her face unreadable. She entered her private study, a small, warm room tucked away at the far end of the house. Unlike the rest of the estate, which screamed of wealth and pride, this room was simple. Shelves of books lined the walls. A wooden desk stood by the window, and a single lamp glowed with soft light. It was the only space in the Montgomery estate that felt like hers. Sophia sat at the desk and placed her hands flat on the surface. Her shoulders trembled once, but she steadied herself. No tears fell. She would not give Alexander the satisfaction of breaking her, even in private. Her mind drifted backward against her will into memories. She had stood in the hallway of Alexander's office 3 years ago, frozen. Through the half-open door, she heard the low murmur of voices followed by laughter. A white woman's laughter, young, bright, playful. She pushed the door open just enough to see. Alexander stood behind his desk, his hands around the waist of a woman with long blonde hair. Isabella, his secretary. Her lips pressed against his, their laughter tangled with kisses. Sophia's heart cracked silently, but she did not step in. She closed the door slowly, pressing her hand to her mouth to stifle the soundless cry. That night, she confronted Alexander. "Who is she?" she asked quietly, standing in their bedroom doorway. Alexander didn't even flinch. He sat on the bed, unbuttoning his shirt. "Don't start, Sophia. You're boring. She's exciting. End of story." Her throat tightened. "You're my husband. And you're my burden," Alexander said coldly. "Don't lecture me. You should be grateful I keep you here at all." Sophia had turned away, her body stiff, her heart bleeding in silence. The memory burned like a scar she could never heal. Another followed, one that hurt even more. 2 years later, Sophia sat across from Eleanor in the grand living room. She had found the courage to speak. "Mother Montgomery," she said softly, "Alexander he's unfaithful. I can't pretend not to see it anymore." Eleanor sipped her tea calmly, her silver spoon clinking against the cup. Then she sat it down and looked Sophia straight in the eyes. "Isabella is better for Alexander," she said coldly. "She has charm, ambition, presence, qualities you lack." Sophia's lips parted in shock. "You approve of it. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing. Sophia, you were never right for this family. You came from nothing, and nothing is what you bring. If Alexander finds joy elsewhere, why should I stop him? Sophia had lowered her gaze, her heart breaking under the weight of those words. She realized then that in this house she had no allies. The memory faded. Sophia sat in her study now, staring at the soft glow of her lamp. The scars were deep, but they were hidden, carried where no one could see them. The knock at her door startled her. "Come in," Sophia said quietly. The door opened and Olivia stepped inside. She closed it behind her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. Her smile was warm, her eyes soft. "I thought you could use this," Olivia said, setting 1 mug on the desk in front of Sophia. Sophia's lips curved into a small, tired smile. "Thank you." Olivia sat beside her. "How are you holding up?" Sophia hesitated, then sighed. It hurt, of course it did. Being treated like that in front of everyone. It's not something you forget. Olivia reached out, wrapping her arms around Sophia's shoulders. She hugged her tight, her voice soothing. "You don't deserve this, Sophia. He's cruel. He's blind. You deserve better." Sophia leaned into the hug, letting herself rest for a moment. "Sometimes I wonder what I did wrong." Olivia pulled back, gripping Sophia's hands. "You did nothing wrong. You're good. Too good for him. If he can't see that, it's his loss." Sophia's eyes watered, though no tears fell. She nodded slowly. "Thank you, Olivia. You're the only one who stands beside me." Olivia smiled gently, squeezing her hands again. "Always." But when Sophia looked away, Olivia's eyes shifted. The warmth faded for a second, replaced by calculation. She was already thinking of Alexander, of his strong voice, his confidence, the way he owned every room he entered. She blinked, hiding it quickly behind another soft smile. For now she would play the role of the loyal friend, but the cracks in her loyalty had already begun to show. The estate grew quiet as the night deepened. Sophia retreated upstairs, leaving Olivia alone in the study for a moment. Olivia sat there, staring at the half-empty mug of tea. Her fingers traced the rim of the cup as her thoughts drifted back to Alexander. She could still see him at the head of the table, laughing, fearless, powerful. Even in his cruelty, he commanded every eye in the room. And Olivia, though she hated herself for it, had felt a rush in her chest as she watched him. He made her feel something Sophia never could. When Sophia returned, Olivia excused herself, saying she needed rest. Sophia smiled faintly, grateful for her friend's company, and let her go. But Olivia didn't head to her guest room. She walked down the corridor and slipped out the side door into the garden. The night air was cool, the fountain in the courtyard whispering softly, and there he was, Alexander, leaning against the stone wall, smoking a cigar. "You came," he said with a sly grin, his voice low and smooth. Olivia's breath caught. "You asked me to." Alexander stepped closer, the glow of the cigar lighting his sharp features. "Sophia doesn't get me, Olivia. She never did. Always so quiet, so dull." "But you." He brushed his hand lightly against her arm. "You understand me better than she ever did." Olivia's pulse quickened. She wanted to push him away, but instead she stayed still. His words sank into her like honey laced with poison. She had always been Sophia's friend, but in this moment, she let herself believe she was different. Special. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. Alexander smirked. "Why not? You've seen it. Sophia's weak. She's nothing without me. And you?" His eyes lingered on her, slow and deliberate. "You deserve better than standing in her shadow. Olivia swallowed hard, her heart torn. She's my friend. Alexander leaned closer, his voice a whisper. And yet she keeps dragging you down with her. You're wasted at her side. But with me. He let the words hang. Unfinished. Dangerous. Olivia's breath trembled. She looked away, but she didn't step back. Somewhere deep inside, a line was crossed. Go back before someone sees you, Alexander said finally, flicking the cigar into the fountain. But remember what I told you. Olivia nodded faintly and slipped back inside, her mind spinning. She told herself it was just words, just a moment. But she carried them with her like a secret flame, one that would burn brighter with time. Upstairs, Sophia sat alone in her study once more. She pulled out a small key from the chain she wore beneath her dress and unlocked the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside lay a stack of neatly bound documents, hidden away for years. Her hands touched the papers gently, almost reverently. The documents were proof of her quiet strength, the contracts, the shares, the signed agreements that made her the true majority owner of Montgomery Industries. 90% of the company belonged to her, though no one knew it. She remembered the day years ago when Alexander's business had nearly collapsed. Investors had fled, debts piled high, and his empire stood on the edge of ruin. Alexander had been desperate, angry, and afraid. He never knew that Sophia's inheritance, carefully hidden from him, had been the lifeline that saved everything. She had poured her fortune into the company under another name, quietly securing ownership, while letting him believe he had pulled through by his own brilliance. Alexander thought he built Montgomery Industries. Eleanor praised his genius, Benjamin envied his position, and the world applauded him as a man of power. None of them knew the truth, that the empire they worshipped stood on Sophia's silent sacrifice. She stared at the papers, her face calm, her eyes unreadable. She could destroy him with a word. She could strip away his pride, his arrogance, his lies. But not yet. Sophia locked the drawer again, slipping the key back beneath her dress. She stood slowly, her reflection in the window staring back at her. He thought she was weak. Olivia thought she was fragile. Eleanor thought she was worthless. Even Benjamin believed she was invisible. They were all wrong. Sophia turned off the lamp and stepped into the hallway. The house was dark, but inside her, something had begun to glow. The scars were still there, hidden, deep. But scars are proof of survival, and soon survival would turn into something else. The metropolis was alive that evening, its skyline glowing against the night sky. Montgomery Industries had organized a corporate gala to celebrate a new partnership deal. Guests in glittering gowns and sharp suits filled the hotel ballroom, music floating through the air like silk. Sophia arrived quietly, her dark green dress modest compared to the sparkling gowns around her. She stayed near the back of the room, content to avoid the spotlight. But no matter how much she wished to blend in, she could not escape the whispers. Alexander made sure of that. He entered the ballroom with Isabella on his arm, her golden hair shining under the lights. She wore a daring red dress, her hand clinging to Alexander's sleeve as if she belonged there. Alexander laughed loudly, shaking hands, kissing cheeks, introducing Isabella as though she were the true wife. Later that night, in the boardroom upstairs, the mood shifted. Alexander stood at the head of the table with Benjamin at his side. Eleanor sat proudly, her chin high. Olivia lingered in the background, her presence quiet but constant. Alexander paced as he explained his new expansion plans. We'll open branches overseas, Europe, Asia. This is the time to push to show the world that Montgomery Industries is untouchable. One of the directors frowned. It's risky. The company's finances aren't strong enough for such aggressive moves. If this fails, We could Alexander cut him off with a sharp laugh. If this fails, failure doesn't exist under my name. You're either with me, or you're against me. Benjamin leaned forward, smirking. The old men are too cautious, Alexander. They don't see what we see. Take the risk. The bigger the gamble, the bigger the glory. Alexander's chest swelled with pride. He looked around the room, daring anyone to argue. No one did. Sophia, seated quietly at the far end of the table, folded her hands in her lap. She listened, but she said nothing. Her silence made her seem invisible, which suited her for now, but her eyes stayed sharp, watching every word, every careless decision. When the meeting ended, Alexander brushed past her as if she were air. Isabella clung to his arm, whispering in his ear. Eleanor followed close behind, praising him as though he were a king. Benjamin smirked, as if he were the secret hand pulling the strings. Sophia remained seated a moment longer. Her calm face betrayed nothing, but inside she could feel the storm building. The gala ended late, but Alexander stayed in the hotel suite with Isabella. Sophia returned to the estate alone, her driver silent as he carried her through the night streets. She stared out the window, her face calm, but her chest was heavy. Each time Alexander flaunted Isabella, it wasn't only a betrayal, it was a declaration to the world that Sophia did not matter. Back at the estate, Olivia slipped into Sophia's room. She sat on the edge of the bed, her voice soft. You shouldn't have to live like this, Sophia. He humiliates you in front of everyone. And Eleanor. She shook her head, disgust in her tone. They treat you like you're nothing. Sophia folded her hands. It hurts, yes, but leaving him would hurt even more. They would all cheer if I walked away. I won't give them that. Olivia hugged her tightly, whispering, I'll always be here, no matter what. But when Olivia left Sophia's room, her steps took her down the corridor toward the guest lounge where Alexander often stayed when he returned late. She found him there drinking whiskey, his tie loose. You should be with your wife, Olivia said quietly. Alexander smirked. My wife, don't make me laugh. Sophia is dead weight. She doesn't speak, doesn't fight, doesn't even breathe life into a room. She just exists. Olivia bit her lip. She's hurting. Alexander leaned closer, his voice dropping low. And I'm done pretending to care. I'm filing for divorce soon. Olivia's breath caught. Divorce? Yes. His eyes glittered with arrogance. I've already spoken with lawyers. Sophia will be left with scraps. Isabella will stand at my side, and this family will finally look the way it should. He touched Olivia's chin lightly, his smile wicked. But who knows? Maybe there's a bigger place for you in it, too. You're not like her. You get me? You see me? Olivia froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe she was more than a pawn in his games. She nodded faintly, too shaken to speak. The next afternoon, the estate was quiet. Sophia was in her study working through papers. She left for a moment to answer a call, leaving the door ajar. Olivia passed by, curiosity tugging at her. She slipped inside, her eyes falling on the desk. One of the drawers wasn't closed all the way. She bent down, tugging it open. Inside lay folders and papers, neatly stacked. She flipped one open, her brows knitting as she scanned the contents. Shareholder certificates, contracts. Her chest tightened as she skimmed the words, but she shook her head quickly. No, this can't be real. She snapped the folder shut and slid it back into place. To her, it was nothing more than Sophia's fantasy, a desperate collection of papers meant to comfort herself, while Alexander stripped her of dignity. Olivia laughed softly, almost pitying her friend. She left the room without another thought, never realizing she had just held Sophia's greatest weapon in her hands. That evening, Alexander hosted another business dinner, this time smaller and more intimate. Isabella sat beside him, glowing in admiration. Eleanor clinked her glass, praising Isabella as the perfect woman to represent the Montgomerys. Benjamin leaned in with Alexander, whispering about bold expansion plans overseas. And Sophia, she sat quietly again, invisible in her own home. Olivia hovered near Alexander, whispering in his ear, feeding him the gossip of Sophia's fragile state, painting her as weaker than ever. Every laugh, every sneer, every betrayal piled onto Sophia like stones meant to bury her alive. Yet she did not bend. Her silence grew heavier, sharper, like a blade waiting in its sheath. They thought she was powerless. They thought she was cornered. But Sophia's silence was not defeat. It was preparation. The boardroom of Montgomery Industries gleamed with glass walls, polished floors, and long steel tables that reflected the metropolis skyline outside. The morning sun cut through the tall windows, casting sharp beams across the room. Every seat was filled with shareholders, executives, and advisors, their voices low as they waited for the meeting to begin. At the head of the room, Alexander Montgomery stood tall in a tailored suit. His smile was broad, confident, his chest puffed as if the empire already bent to his will. Isabella sat close, perfectly styled in her red dress, her hand brushing his arm every few moments. Eleanor sat beside them, proud and smug, her lips curved in satisfaction. Benjamin leaned against his chair with a grin that suggested secrets only he and Alexander shared. And then there was Sophia. She sat quietly at the far end of the table, her posture straight, her face calm. She wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy, nothing loud. To most in the room, she looked out of place, too plain, too silent, too invisible for a meeting of such importance. Olivia sat near Eleanor, leaning forward with a smirk that never left her lips. Every so often, her eyes drifted to Alexander, hungry for the acknowledgement he rarely gave. Alexander raised his hands, commanding silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice strong and full of pride, "today I stand before you not just as the head of Montgomery Industries, but as the man who will take this company to heights it has never dreamed of." Applause broke out, led by Eleanor and Benjamin. Isabella clapped as if every word were music. Alexander's grin widened. "We are expanding. Montgomery Industries will not remain confined to this country any longer. We will move into Europe, Asia, and beyond. New branches, new markets, new dominance. The world will finally know the full power of our name." He paced as he spoke, his voice growing louder, sharper. "Yes, there are risks. Yes, the cost will be heavy. But history favors the bold, and I am bold. I am a Montgomery, and Montgomery Industries will follow my vision." The room filled with claps again, though not all faces looked convinced. Some whispered quietly, doubt hidden beneath polite smiles. Eleanor lifted her chin, beaming at her son. "Brilliant, Alexander. Your father would be proud." Benjamin leaned in, his whisper just loud enough for Alexander to hear. "Ignore the cautious ones. Push forward. They'll fall in line when the profits come." Alexander nodded, soaking in the praise. His eyes flicked to Sophia at the far end. She had not clapped. She had not moved. She simply sat, watching him with a calmness that unnerved him for a moment. He brushed it off quickly. "Sophia," he said loudly, drawing attention to her. "Tell me, do you approve, or will you stay silent as always, pretending you matter?" The room chuckled softly, encouraged by his mockery. Eleanor shook her head, sighing with fake pity. Olivia leaned closer to the table, her smirk widening. Sophia rose slowly, every movement controlled, deliberate. She stood with her hands folded in front of her, her face calm, her voice steady. "Alexander?" she said softly, but her words carried across the room. "I will not pretend," he smirked. Finally, the ghost speaks. Sophia's eyes swept across the table, touching every shareholder, every executive. Then she laid a folder gently on the table, sliding it towards the center. "You speak of bold visions, you speak of dominance, but you forget something important." The room grew quiet. All eyes shifted to her. Sophia opened the folder, spreading out documents, shareholder certificates, contracts, stamped agreements. Her hand rested lightly on them as she spoke. "I own Montgomery Industries," she said clearly. 90% of it." The room gasped. Murmurs erupted like a storm. Faces turned in shock, disbelief, confusion. Alexander froze. His laughter started weak at first, then louder. This is ridiculous. A joke. Sophia, sit down before you embarrass yourself further." Olivia barked a laugh, waving her hand dismissively. "Delusional. She's desperate. Don't let her waste our time." Sophia did not flinch. "You can laugh, you can mock, but the truth does not need your permission to exist." She slid the documents towards the nearest board member. "Verify them. Every signature, every seal, every contract. The company you think Alexander built, the company you praise him for, it stands because of me. My inheritance saved it from collapse years ago. My investment holds it steady today. Without me, Montgomery Industries would have crumbled long ago." The documents passed quickly from hand to hand. Eyes widened, voices trembled as the truth became undeniable. One director looked up, pale. It's real. These are valid. Sophia Montgomery is the majority shareholder." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers. Shock filled every corner. Alexander's laughter died in his throat, his face draining of color. Eleanor slammed her hand on the table. "Impossible! This must be a trick!" Benjamin's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of raw calculation. Olivia sat frozen, her lips parted, her smirk gone. The realization struck her like a knife. She had betrayed Sophia for nothing. All this time, the true power had sat quietly beside her, hidden in plain sight. Sophia stood tall, her voice calm, steady, unwavering. "Alexander Montgomery, you no longer have the authority to lead this company. Effective immediately, I am removing you as CEO." The room exploded again, but Sophia's presence silenced it with ease. She turned to Benjamin. "Your reckless schemes end here. Your whispers will no longer poison this table." Benjamin clenched his jaw, but said nothing. Her gaze shifted to Eleanor. "For years you mocked me, you belittled me, you called me unworthy, but I built the ground you stand on. Your voice holds no weight here anymore." Eleanor's face twisted with rage, but no words came. Finally, Sophia turned to Alexander. He stood rigid, his fists clenched, his arrogance cracked open. "Sophia, wait," he stammered. "We can fix this. We can know," Sophia said firmly. His eyes widened. "Please, I didn't know. If I had known, you would have spat on me anyway," she interrupted, her voice cutting through him like glass. "You spat on me in front of the world. Today I return your gift. Not with spit, not with rage, but with truth, and truth doesn't forgive." Alexander's knees weakened. His arrogance collapsed under the weight of her words. He reached for her, but she stepped back, her calmness unshakable. Olivia's voice broke in, desperate. "Sophia, please. You know me. I've always been by your side." "I didn't mean." Sophia's eyes flicked to her. "You betrayed me in silence, Olivia. That is worse than open cruelty. You traded loyalty for crumbs of attention. And now you have nothing." Olivia's face crumpled. She lowered her head, tears stinging her eyes. The room stayed silent, every shareholder watching Sophia with awe. She gathered her documents calmly, sliding them back into her folder. The meeting is over. From this moment on, Montgomery Industries will be led with integrity, not arrogance. We will grow, but not recklessly. We will succeed, but not at the cost of our soul. Sophia turned and walked toward the door, her steps steady, her back straight. Behind her, Alexander collapsed into his chair. Ruined. Isabella slipped away quietly, unwilling to sink with him. Eleanor sat in stunned silence, her power stripped. Benjamin stared at the table, his plans destroyed. Olivia remained motionless, her betrayal leaving her broken and irrelevant. Sophia walked out of the boardroom with dignity. She was not just avenged, she was reborn. True power is quiet, integrity endures, and betrayal always destroys the betrayer.